In the late 1840s in the Deep South, a wealthy plantation owner's daughter dies under mysterious circumstances. The official record lists consumption, but decades later, reconstruction era workers uncover a sealed cellar beneath the plantation house, containing a preserved female body, not matching the girl's age or appearance. Local whispers speak of experiments, forbidden medicine, and the guilt of a family desperate to hide its shame. In the county archives of Stame, Martin Parish lies a letter sealed in wax, its paper browned, its ink the color of dried blood. The envelope reads only, concerning the cellar beneath Rosewood. For nearly a century no one dared open it. In the summer of 1874, a team of men were hired to restore the charred remains of the Rosewood plantation house, a relic of the antebellum South, still standing like a wounded monument to everything the war had burned away. The workers, former soldiers and freedmen, were clearing debris when one of them struck a hollow patch beneath the main hall. What they found below the floorboards would never appear in the official restoration reports. Inside a brick-lined cellar, sealed behind iron plating and decades of silence, they discovered a wooden table draped in rotted linen. Beneath it, a coffin, unmarked, unblessed, and coated in the thick scent of formaldehyde. Inside the coffin lay the remains of a young woman, her body unusually preserved, her features eerily serene, as if she had never decayed at all. The records note her only as unknown female specimen, adult size, Caucasian, but in the oral histories of the parish, they still whisper her name, Margaret Rosewood, the only daughter of Colonel Silas Rosewood, a plantation owner once called the King of the Cane Fields, known for his immense wealth, his cruelty, and his obsession with appearances. According to the census of 1849, Margaret was 21 years old when she fell ill. Her father's physician listed the cause as pulmonary failure, a polite 19th-century euphemism for any wasting sickness, consumption, fever, or heartbreak. But locals told another story that Margaret's illness came not from disease, but from shame. Shame born of a secret her father would do anything to bury. In the late 1840s, Rosewood Plantation sprawled over 800 acres of sugarcane and swamp, its fields cut by enslaved hands beneath the boiling Louisiana sun. The war had not yet come, but the air was already thick with unrest. Whispers of rebellion, rumors of cholera, and the strange disappearances of those who disobeyed the colonel's will. The Rosewood family ruled this land like minor royalty. Their main house gleamed with white columns and imported glass, its parlor filled with European curiosities, and yet, beneath that gentility ran a current of decay. Neighbors described Colonel Rosewood as a man of God and temper, meaning that he could quote scripture in one breath and strike a man down in the next. Margaret, his only surviving child, was described in town records as large in form, delicate in constitution, and gentle in spirit. In letters preserved from her finishing school in New Orleans, she wrote of the ache of being unseen, of her father's disappointment, and of the house that grows colder each year. She returned to Rosewood in 1848, reportedly too ill to remain in the city. Within months, she vanished from public view. Her father claimed she was bedridden. Yet the servants whispered that her room was moved to the cellar, that she was kept below, to preserve her from drafts or from sight. What the records hide, the Rosewood Death Registry contains a single entry for that year, N.R. Natural passing 21 years, buried private family plot. June 1849, no burial certificate exists, no stone bears her name, and yet, in that sealed cellar discovered 25 years later, the woman found preserved in chemicals bore a faint locket, engraved with the initials M.R. Was this Margaret's body, hidden away by a father unable to let her go, or was it something far worse? A substitute, a fabrication, part of an experiment in death and preservation that local doctors later whispered about in closed chambers. Because among the surviving fragments of Colonel Rosewood's personal papers, one note stands out: decomposition arrested. Heart ceased but tissue remains supple. Success. The handwriting is shaky, the ink blotted. No one knows if the line was written before or after Margaret's death. The plantation's unholy silence, in the years that followed the discovery, Rosewood's name was quietly erased from county maps. The land was sold off in pieces, the house demolished before the 20th century could record it in photographs. Only the foundation remains, swallowed by moss and sugarcane roots. But those who have walked the land after dark tell stories of flickering light beneath the soil, as if something still stirs beneath the ruined foundation. Local folklore calls it the Lantern of the Daughter. They say it appears only in August, around the date of her supposed death, glowing faintly from beneath the earth like the echo of a buried secret refusing to rest. Historians dispute these tales. Skeptics point to swamp gas and phosphorescence, but others, archivists, genealogists, and a few daring paranormal investigators, claim that the Rosewood cellar still exists, sealed by mud and time, its contents undisturbed. What lies inside that cellar, and what happened to Margaret Rosewood in her final days, remain among the South's most chilling historical enigmas. Was Colonel Rosewood simply a grieving father who could not part with his daughter's body? Or was he a man driven to madness, tampering with forbidden science to deny death itself? And why did the county quietly seal the report of the body's discovery, marking it classified due to public sensitivity? But why did this happen, and why was it erased from history? Before we continue, if this story intrigues you, subscribe and ring the bell, so you never miss our deep dives into America's darkest historical mysteries. And tell us what city or state you're listening from. We love hearing from our community of history enthusiasts. In 1821, when the Louisiana territory was still raw and half swamp, Silas Rosewood arrived from Virginia with a dozen enslaved men and a fortune inherited from his late uncle, a shipping merchant who had made his wealth trading cotton and rum. Silas purchased 500 acres of marshland along the Bayou Teche, a place no one wanted, said to be cursed by the Natchez who once lived there. Within 5 years, that swamp became Rosewood Plantation, one of the richest sugar producers in the region. He built the mansion by hand-picked labor, whitewashed columns, iron balconies, and a central hall designed to mimic the grand estates of the Old World. To outsiders, it was a beacon of southern prosperity. But to those who worked its fields, Rosewood was a prison cloaked in magnolia petals. Letters from visiting merchants described a perfection of order. Every tool, every person, every breath subject to the colonel's temper and timing. His discipline was legend. One visitor wrote, "No man spoke above a whisper in his presence. Even the crows seemed to hush when he rode past." Silas married young, a quiet woman from Charleston named Clara Beaumont. Their union was as practical as it was loveless. Clara was delicate, often bedridden, her health failing after giving birth to Margaret in 1828. She died of fever 10 years later, leaving Silas alone to raise his daughter amid a house haunted by the memory of obedience. Margaret grew up surrounded by refinement and restraint, taught piano by candlelight, scripture at dawn, and silence at supper. Her childhood diary, found decades later in a church attic, tells of a lonely girl wandering the fields, talking to no one but the wind and the trees. She called her father, stern but splendid, describing him as made of stone, warmed only when others feared him. But even in her youth, there were hints of something darker beneath her father's obsession with control. Former servants recalled strange deliveries arriving late at night, glass jars, crates from New Orleans labeled medical supplies. One enslaved woman, interviewed during Reconstruction, told a WPA historian, "There was a room under the house where no one went. The master said it was for the sick, but we heard things down there. We heard voices when no one was speaking." A family above suspicion despite the whispers, the Rosewoods maintained their standing. Their Sunday pew was front row at St. Annan's Parish. Their wealth shielded them from inquiry. The colonel even financed a small school for the children of poor white farmers, a gesture that bought him public praise and quiet immunity. But the cracks were widening. After Clara's death, Silas withdrew further into his estate, his letters becoming more erratic, filled with theological ramblings about the nature of life, decay, and the soul. By 1847, his only confidant was a young physician, Dr. Thaddeus Crane, a man fascinated by the new sciences of anatomy and preservation. Crane's journal, discovered years later, contained an entry dated May 4, 1849. The Colonel requests assistance in maintaining what nature would take from him. He believes the spirit may yet linger if the vessel remains intact. That was the spring Margaret fell ill, and within weeks, Rosewood Plantation would become the site of a secret so dark it would be buried, literally, beneath its own foundations. By the winter of 1848, the house at Rosewood grew unnaturally quiet. The servants said Miss Margaret no longer came down for supper. Her piano, once heard drifting from the parlor after sunset, sat untouched, keys gathering dust. The doctor visited twice a week, arriving after dark, his carriage draped in black cloth. He brought bottles of tonic and instruments wrapped in linen, and each time he left, the Colonel followed him to the gate, their hushed arguments carried by the wind. Neighbors were told that Margaret suffered from nervous exhaustion, a genteel term that covered every illness from melancholy to madness. But one field hand, who later fled north, recalled carrying crates to the cellar during those months. Inside, he claimed, was a smell like vinegar and death. The family's cook, an elderly woman named Celeste, described seeing light under the floorboards near midnight. It wasn't candlelight, she said. It was too bright, like lightning caught in a jar. By early spring, the Rosewood Plantation was operating under strange new rules. No one was permitted inside after sunset. The shutters remained closed even during the hottest days. And then, one morning in May, the Colonel summoned the preacher. He told the parish that his daughter had passed peacefully in her sleep. But there was no funeral, no burial procession, no hymns. Only the sound of hammering in the cellar, heard by the servants that night, echoing through the floorboards like a heartbeat beneath the house. The Rosewood cellar was built long before the mansion itself, part of an old French foundation left from a trading post along the bayou. Its walls were thick, its air perpetually damp. After Margaret's death, Silas ordered the cellar sealed, claiming it was contaminated. But the few who ventured close told stories that spread like rot through the parish. A stable hand swore he heard crying below the parlor floor 2 nights after the supposed burial. Another said he saw Silas dragging a large crate through the house alone, his shirt soaked in sweat, his face streaked with tears. Within weeks, Dr. Thaddeus Crane resigned his post and vanished from the county entirely. His home was found abandoned, table overturned, papers burned in the hearth. Only one note remained written in a trembling hand. It moves. God forgive me. It moves. After that night, Silas dismissed nearly all his servants, keeping only 2 Celeste and a mute boy who tended the grounds. Both later claimed the Colonel lived in the cellar for months, descending at dusk and emerging near dawn. He told anyone who asked that he was tending to the dead. But a visitor from Baton Rouge described the Colonel's appearance by late summer. Thin, hollow-eyed, and strangely euphoric. He spoke of conquering the rot, of holding fast the vessel. The man left after one night, refusing ever to return. By 1850, Silas Rosewood was declared mentally unfit by his own kin. His property was managed by distant relatives until his death 3 years later. The mansion, neglected and shunned, began to decay, shutters hanging loose, vines creeping up its walls. But no one dared unseal the cellar. Not yet. 25 years later, the past clawed its way back into daylight. When reconstruction laborers unearthed the sealed chamber, they expected to find only wine or storage. Instead, they found a vault of stone, an iron door fused shut by rust. Inside, the table, the coffin, and beside it, rows of glass jars filled with colorless liquid. Some held fragments of what appeared to be preserved organs. At the center of the room, a journal lay on the floor, water damaged but still legible. It bore the initials SR. The final entry read, "Her silence is unbroken, yet her form endures. I have bound her to this place until the Lord restores the breath he took too soon." The discovery was never published. The sheriff ordered the chamber resealed and the artifacts moved to county custody. Within weeks, those materials disappeared, along with the journal and the coffin's contents. The workers who found the body never spoke publicly, but one, interviewed in 1891, left a haunting statement. "That wasn't no corpse, sir. That was something waiting to wake. The cellar was filled again, the land was sold, and the name Rosewood faded into legend. Yet even now, the mystery lingers, not only of what was done, but of what the Colonel believed he had done. When the Rosewood cellar was rediscovered in 1874, local authorities filed only a single report, 1 page long, unsigned, and marked, "Property destroyed for sanitation reasons." Yet rumors spread faster than the sugarcane fires that often plagued the parish. Each version contradicted the last. Each seemed more impossible and more believable than the one before. The first and most documented theory points to Dr. Thaddeus Crane, the physician who treated Margaret before her death. Crane was a real man. His name appears in the 1847 St. Martin Parish Medical Registry. After his disappearance, however, no trace of him appears in any census, obituary, or professional ledger. It's as if he'd been erased. Some historians believe Crane and Colonel Rosewood were conducting early anatomical experiments inspired by the new European science of preservation, the very beginnings of what would later become embalming. During the 1840s, European surgeons were experimenting with chemical injections that could halt decay, an obscure art practiced mostly by those seeking to immortalize specimens for study. If Crane introduced these methods to Louisiana, the theory goes, Rosewood may have used them not for medicine but obsession. In 1963, a biochemist examining recovered fragments from the site claimed trace elements of arsenic and mercuric chloride, both known preservatives used in early anatomical experiments. This supports the theory that the preserved body, discovered in 1874, was not supernatural at all, but the result of primitive embalming, sealed away by a father unable to let go of his daughter's remains. Yet there's one problem. Crane's journal, partially transcribed before its disappearance, contains a line that defies all logic. She breathes without breath. The heart stilled, but the flesh remembers. No medical interpretation can explain that. Among locals, the story took a darker turn. In the oral histories of freedmen who once worked the land, there's talk of the debt of blood, a curse said to fall upon any man who defied the natural order. According to the legend, Silas Rosewood bargained with a Bayou conjurer, offering blood from his own kin to stave off death. The ritual failed, binding the daughter's soul to the cellar instead. Old songs recorded in the 1930s mention the lady below, a spirit that lured travelers with her light, said to glow from the ruins of the plantation once a year, drawing the living toward the earth. The story became a southern ghost tale, repeated in whispers to frighten children. But what gives this version weight is not its supernatural flair. It's the fact that the dates align. The apparition, locals say, appears each August around the anniversary of Margaret's supposed death. Reports of strange lights, ghostly moaning, even sudden temperature drops in the area have continued for over a century. Coincidence, perhaps, or something else. Then there's the most forbidden interpretation, the one historians avoid in print. This theory claims that the Rosewood mystery was not an isolated tragedy, but part of a larger effort by wealthy planters experimenting with body preservation and blood transfusion, hoping to cheat mortality as epidemics ravaged the South. Letters found in the archives of a New Orleans medical college mention a patron in the cane fields, funding studies into the arrest of natural corruption. Some believe that patron was Silas Rosewood himself, that his grief was only the surface of a grander obsession to outwit decay, to defeat the divine law of death. If that's true, the county's decision to suppress the 1874 discovery wasn't about decency. It was about secrecy, to conceal evidence of experiments that blurred the line between science and sacrilege. By the dawn of the 20th century, the name Rosewood had nearly vanished from Louisiana maps. The estate's ruins were cleared, the land parceled out to new owners who preferred not to know what had once stood there. Even the parish clerk's ledgers were rewritten. The line that once read, Rosewood Estate, replaced simply by Section 9, Private. No photos survive of the mansion before its demolition, no sketches, only a single watercolor painting, unsigned, discovered in an attic near Baton Rouge. It shows a woman standing by a window, her outline hazy, The fields behind her blurred as if by heat, but those who settled the land afterward told stories that sound almost identical despite the decades between them. Livestock found dead near the old well, lights glowing under the ground, and on the stillest nights, the faint echo of a piano, one note played over and over until dawn. County records show multiple ownership turnovers, each new family leaving within a few years. One owner's journal, dated 1912, contains this line: "The air smells wrong when the fog comes in, like someone just opened a grave." The folklore of the forgotten daughter. By the 1930s, the story of the daughter in the cellar had drifted into local folklore. Children dared each other to walk the Bayou Road at night, hoping to glimpse her lantern. Church sermons warned against tampering with the flesh. In some versions, Margaret Rosewood became a victim, a symbol of patriarchal cruelty, silenced by her father's madness. In others, she was complicit, a curious soul who joined him willingly in the study of death. Each retelling says more about the teller than the truth. And yet, deep in the archives of Louisiana State University, a single newspaper clipping survives, the Tech Herald, dated August 1874. The short article reads, "Body discovered on former Rosewood grounds. Female preserved. County requests discretion. Religious consultation pending." That is the last known mention of her in any official record. But in 1967, a team of archaeology students claimed to locate the remnants of a substructure beneath what had been the plantation's foundation. They were denied a permit to excavate. The site remains restricted to this day, privately owned by a sugar cooperative that refuses all inquiries. Even now, historians and folklorists disagree on what Rosewood represents. Some see it as a cautionary tale, a parable of grief turned to obsession, of faith replaced by control. Others believe it's evidence of a forgotten moment in American science, when the fear of death drove men to unholy experiments. And then there are those who insist that the story is not finished. Each year, a handful of locals still visit the old road at sunset on the anniversary of Margaret's death. They say the air changes, the crickets go silent, the wind stops, and for a moment, the world feels suspended, as if waiting. Some claim to have heard the faint sound of a woman's breath behind them. Others say they see nothing, but feel watched from below. Perhaps the truth still lies hidden in archives, diaries, or whispers no one dares repeat. Or perhaps it was never buried at all. Because some stories refuse to die, they linger, reshaping themselves, passing from record to rumor, from rumor to legend, until the legend itself becomes the only proof that something once lived and loved and was lost beneath the weight of its own secrecy. Whatever the truth of Rosewood Plantation, whether science, sin, or sorrow, one fact remains: the ground remembers, and memory, once awakened, is a thing that never truly sleeps. The story of Margaret Rosewood is more than a ghost tale. It's a window into the kind of grief that destroys reason, and the kind of pride that refuses to release its dead. Whether the colonel's act was one of love, madness, or defiance, we may never know. What we do know is this: something was found in that cellar. Something human, but not entirely natural. And the men who discovered it swore never to speak of it again. Was it science ahead of its time? A father's desperate attempt to preserve his child? Or a darker transgression, the theft of the divine, disguised as devotion? Every generation that revisits this story finds a new version of the truth. Some call it tragedy, others call it curse. But maybe the truth is simpler, that in trying to preserve what he loved most, Silas Rosewood only succeeded in preserving his own guilt. The land still carries it, the silence still hums with it. And maybe, somewhere beneath the sugarcane roots and red clay, the cellar still waits, sealed, watching, listening for the world to remember her name again. But what do you think? Which theory makes the most sense to you? The medical experiment, the curse, or the conspiracy? And what detail disturbed you the most? Let us know in the comments below. Your theories, your insights, and your curiosity keep these forgotten stories alive. If this mystery unsettled you as much as it fascinated you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss our next deep dive into America's most haunting historical secrets. And before you go, Tell us where you're listening from. We love hearing from our growing community of history enthusiasts across the world, because next time, we'll journey north to a 19th century asylum whose walls were built to contain the insane, but may have trapped something far worse. Until then, stay curious, stay brave, and remember, some truths were buried for a reason.